Wow, they became fancy. Zoom became fancy.
Oh, yeah,
So
for it.
this is chapter 37, and it's actually by divine providence. This past Shabbos, we read the longest parsha, the longest portion in the Torah, Parshas of Naso. And chapter 37 is one of the longest chapter in all of Tanya. So let's see how many weeks it'll take us to cover this chapter. But it's a very beautiful chapter and a very important chapter. Um, and we kind of had a break between Shavuot and Lag BaOmer. So let's get back into a little bit, what are we talking about? And we're going to read inside. So those who don't have a book, either order the book or just try to listen in. The topic of the last few weeks was the struggle of your average person, the struggle between the godly and the animals. I'm gonna just mute everyone, and then if you get some questions, you can unmute yourself. Second. So the struggle between every man has between animal soul, godly soul, and the question is it all worth it? If God did not create me as a tzaddik, which tzaddik is a person who has no evil inclination, which is very extremely rare, then why do I have to keep what's the point of my struggle if I'm going to constantly being knocked down by my evil inclination? And we talked about the idea is the different motivation factors. The person should understand, mainly as Tanya says, that the struggle in itself is not the struggle itself is part of the mission why we're here on this earth, because the idea is to make this world a better place, to make a place for Hashem, to reject and to transform the evil inclination, the klippus, as we talked. And it's not about the end result, because in a sense, the end result will never occur until Mashiach happens, but rather the actual rejection and struggle and back and forth in itself is what we hear is perhaps the mission why we're here for, and which we discussed in last chapter. How do we overcome our evil inclination in the best way? Is by engaging ourselves with Hashem giving us His Torah and the mitzvot. The Torah mitzvot are our weapons. How can win the struggle on a daily basis, and it has to be consistently. We said that the reward of a mitzvah. What is the reward for a mitzvah? Many times we look at a mitzvah as a reward situation. I do a mitzvah. When I do something good for somebody else, I kind of hope or expect a certain reward. So many times our approach to our service to Hashem is in the same way. I will do a mitzvah Hashem. I will put up a mezuzah. I will light the candles. I give charity, and I really, really deep down hope I'm going to get protection. I'm going to get livelihood. I'm going to get health. Which is fine, but that in a sense is a little bit self-serving. Rather, the idea of a mitzvah, what is the reward for the mitzvah? We learned in depth in Tanya, the mitzvah itself. The very fact that I have the ability to do a mitzvah, the ability that I have the ability to connect to Hashem, the fact that Hashem has entrusted me, given me the powers to come down to this world, my soul, my neshama, to make a difference, to build a home for Hashem, that in itself, and that is being accomplished by every mitzvah, by every struggle in itself, that is a holy activity. That in itself gives Hashem tremendous joy, tremendous nachas. And if you think about it, what is the greatest connection a child has to a parent when you know they really care and love for each other? Is not for a child just to behave so they can get their candies, but for a child to care for the parents, to give nachas, to give joy to the parents, to stand in awe of the parents, stand in love with the parents. And that experience was given to us via the mitzvahs, via the Torah studies. That's kind of the theme of the last few weeks, which will lead us, because we're not just in this constant struggle with no end in sight, because we were promised by Hashem, and we look at the whole picture, the big picture of being, of creation, that there's a goal. There's a goal in place. What is the goal? Complete transformation. Every day, my job is transformation, transforming this world, transforming negativity into positivity. But the big picture, the goal is that there should be this completion, which we talk about, of the era of Mashiach, the Messianic era, where when Mashiach will come, evil will be eradicated. And if evil is being eradicated, the whole existence of evil is just for us to be challenged. So then we're coming to a pre-creation state of just Hashem's existence in its full glory, with no filter, with no tzimtzum, with no contractions, with no limitations. It's kind of, the veil will be lifted, and then we will kind of bask in the glory of Hashem in the most powerful way. And that's and every mitzvah that I do brings us closer to this reality that already exists. It's not a reality that will happen. Rather, the reality of Hashem's glory exists since the beginning of creation. It is all that clippers that we got to peel off. That once that, through the mitzvah, those clippers peel off, we have the coming of the Messianic era of Mashiach. Now, all sounds great, and kind of gives us direction and the plan. And when you have a plan and direction in your toolbox, you can go out in your day and your life and understanding what it's all about, what the mission is all about, and then you're much more empowered. Empowered in a way that when I do struggle, and we all struggle, and the struggle is, as we said, part of the journey, but I feel the struggle is worth it. And if I feel that there's worth in what I'm doing, I can continue to persevere. With that, we need to, he's going to go a drop deeper, but not deeper in a like something that's so abstract, but actually the opposite. And I'll preface that with, I got a text a few days ago from a member of our community. She'd been listening to Rabbi Manis Friedman online. He's a great, one of my favorite teachers, and he lectures. He has a lot of lectures online, Facebook, all over. Look him up, Rabbi Manis Friedman. He's very big into a few topics in relationships, in afterlife, and in and parenting, relationship to Hashem. Great, unbelievable lecture, and has a tremendous way of explaining things. She texted me. This lady texted me, what is my opinion about him? I kind of like him, but kind of strange. So I asked, what do you find strange about him? So she writes that he really teaches about the afterlife, about resurrection. That's not, I didn't know that's, I didn't know that's kind of a Jewish thing. And then, of course, she said, and I explained, I'm a big fan, and afterlife and resurrection is very much a Jewish thing. It's one of the fundamentals. And then she says, but Rabbi, how come you don't teach it? I said, come to the classes. All right. But here's the deal. And we'll touch upon that. Maimonides wrote down 13 principles of faith. They famously begin with the word ani ma'amin. Many people have actually the custom to read them every day, and you can look them up. Ani ma'amin means I believe. I believe, for example, one of them believe that the Torah comes from Hashem. I believe that God created everything. Number 12 is, I believe in the coming of Mashiach. Number 13 is, I believe in the coming of Mashiach, and not only the coming of a messianic era where there will be no more pain and suffering, no more evil, but I believe in Tchiyat HaMetim, in the resurrection of the dead. Now, what does that mean? So we say it in our prayer. Every Amida, every single Amida always begins with the same three blessings. Blessing number 2 is the blessing of Mechaye Metim. Right? We say after the first blessing, we say as follows. Quotes. Know what you're reading as you're saying it. Atogi bar le'olam ador Hashem. You are strong, Hashem, forever. Mechaye metim ata. You are the power to resurrect the death. Rav lehoshia, powerful to save. And then comes the song, Mechakel chayim bechesed, right? Who sustains the living with loving kindness, resurrects the dead with great mercy, supports the falling, heals the sick, releases the bound, fulfills his trust to those who sleep in the dust. Who is like you, mighty one, and who can be compared to you, King, who brings death and restore life and cause deliverance to spring forth? You are trustworthy to revive the dead. Blessed are you, Lord, who revives the dead. Have you seen any revival of any dead people yet? Well, in a sense, every time we wake up in the morning, it is a mini resurrection. But resurrection of the death will happen with the coming of the Messianic era. The question is, why is that such a fundamental belief? Why is that important? It sounds very a bizarre idea that the dead people will come back alive, which will make for a whole nother class. But let's talk soul for a moment. Soul, neshama, as in chapter 2, is an actual part of Hashem. Soul comes down into a body at the conception or birth and has a certain mission to fulfill. It's being together with the body, then it dies. What happens to the soul after it dies? It goes back up to Hashem. It goes back to heaven. When we talk about heaven, it doesn't mean the sky. It means the spiritual realms, correct? Where is a soul happier? In a spiritual realm or stuck in a body? Obviously, in a spiritual realm, soul feels much more at free. It's free to do anything it wants. It's not dealing with some type of selfish, egotistical kalipa of an animal body, an animal soul. However, so in a sense, when a person passes away, it says the people down on earth are sad. The soul is actually happy. We cry for the soul. The soul is not really sad. Now, so imagine a person passed away 3,000 years ago, and that soul is having a great time up in heaven. And now, today, Mashiach is arriving. Messianic era has arrived. We've been waiting for 5,000 years. Now the Messianic era has arrived. Okay, so the people on earth are having a good time. No more sickness, no more pain, no more war, right? Great, no more struggles. Good, we're having a good life now. But now, the alarms go up in heaven. 1 second, Mr. Soul from 3,000 years ago, time to come back to earth. Time to come back into your body. Resurrection, God will recreate your body and you're going to come back to life. The soul says, well, what do I need it for? Why would I want to come back down? Okay, so it'll be nice to meet our parents and our grandparents, and it'll be nice, right? It'll be nice to meet Moses and Rabbi Akiva. It'll be great. The population of the world, think about it. Which, by the way, it refers to only, it says only good people will come back, not the bad people. So no worries. Now, it's a nice concept, but why is that a fundamental in Judaism? And why is that not just a fundamental? As we're going to see, the first part of this chapter says that the entire purpose of creation was really to bring the times of Mashiach and the resurrection of the death. That is the whole purpose of creation. Why is that the purpose of creation? I want to give quick the answer that's mentioned here and other places, and then we can read the chapter and get a better grasp. When it comes to Hashem, we have what's called in Kabbalah the Or Ein Sof, which is the infinite light. And then we have what we call Etzem, or Yechida. Etzem is the essence of Hashem. So just to make it very, very in simple terms, we have the difference between essence and light. You have the source of light, and then you have the ray of the light. The ray of the light is not the source; it's just a projection. The essence of Hashem, we learned in Tanya. The essence of Hashem is so powerful that a world cannot be created by that powerful light. There had to be a filter, the tzimtzum. Where does Hashem? So Hashem creates the universe. Hashem creates also spiritual universes. So we have angels, for example, which are spiritual beings that are much more loftier than we have a physical world. In order to create a physical world, there had to be so many filters that a world can be created that doesn't feel or sees Hashem's presence. The essence of Hashem, however, we spoke about it, is wants to have a home in this physical world, not in the spiritual world. Why? What is the bigger deal? What's a bigger deal? For the essence of Hashem to coexist in this physical world, or for the essence of Hashem to exist in a spiritual realm? What's a bigger chidush? What's a bigger deal? Down in this world. Because two opposites come together. Hashem wanted his essence to coexist with something that opposes him. He created something that opposes him, and yet his purpose was that they should come together and fuse together and coexist. That's the purpose. That is not as a big deal in the spiritual realm. In the spiritual realm, you have the light of Hashem, the essence of Hashem. That's not a big deal. But to have a physical world that rejects Hashem on the outside, and there Hashem comes in its full glory, in its core essence, that is the biggest deal. And that's what the purpose and mission is all about. Similar, just like Hashem wants to be in this physical world in his essence, Hashem also wants that the soul should be in a body, because the soul and body is kind of like, imagine soul, the essence of Hashem, body being the opposite of Hashem, but they come together. And that coming together, two opposites, is what it's all about. That's why Hashem created something on the other spectrum, so they can come and live back, and they should recognize, and the opposite should recognize the essence of Hashem, be able to coexist without melting in its, without disappearing. And that is why, and I said that in a very short few minutes, why the soul purpose is not in Gan Eden, not in heaven. The ultimate purpose is to come back into a body where the body is completely transparent and can sense and feel the essence of the soul, the essence of Hashem. And that is what will happen when Mashiach will come. So Mashiach is not just about having a good time no more suffering, but actually the ultimate is to bring the highest soul, the core of our souls, back into a body, and then is what creation was all about. So the resurrection of the death is not just a nice gift. It's actually a fundamental part of the entire creation. Bella, your face looks really rattled. Ask the question. Go ahead. You have to unmute yourself. What's your question? You have to unmute yourself.
Okay. We always say that we created in God's image.
Yeah.
Does that mean that our soul is the image of God? Because you said the body is opposite to God. How is it? Why is it opposite? Because it has animal soul?
When I say body, I'm referring to the animal soul, which gives function to the body, right? It was created as an opposite to challenge us, right? Hashem created our bodies and animal soul to challenge our neshama when it comes down, and then we have that constant struggle. But the ultimate is not that we should then finish the job. We work, do our best, and then we go away. But ultimately, we come back where body and soul become perfect partners. You know when that existed? On the day Adam and Eve were created. Before they ate from the tree of knowledge, they were completely naked. There was no self, there was no ego. So they were in complete, body and soul were completely in harmony, where body was completely a vehicle for the soul 100%. And when you have that, when you have no trace of self or no trace of evil, the body has the ability, not the ability, automatically, the body is just like another soul figure in a body way that can actually be there, the vehicle to serve Hashem. And by default, there is no sickness, there's no pain, and we'll live forever. There's no death.
So was it Adam and Eve free choice to have that, to create that sin, or was it created by God?
That they should sin?
Yeah.
That's the big debate. In hindsight, it was kind of pre-planned.
I think so. I believe that too.
Because it was, the idea was it should be earned. It shouldn't be just given.
By the sweat of the brow.
It's taken us a long time to earn it. So, but it's yes, sad. You have to unmute.
I got it. Okay. When someone dies, I know that they try to put all the pieces, even in a terrorist attack, all the pieces back with the body in the ground.
Mm-hmm.
You said that when somebody is resurrected, their soul is in a body that's transparent. Is that correct? Did I get that? I mean, I heard the word transparent. In other words, like you said, if we actually put all these souls in bodies, then the earth would be filled with people. Okay, even the oceans, they probably have to hold on to each other. Is there a purpose, or let's just say that all the pieces are not put back into the coffin? Still, the body will be resurrected, hopefully, if they were a good person. If they were not, and we're all good and bad. There is nobody that I know of that doesn't have some kind of evil inclination, including myself. Lovely. charming though I say it, everybody has good and bad within them. I don't think that we're angels, and I think that it's very difficult to assume that anyone is going to be perfect. But
I didn't
that's
say,
okay. I guess that's why Mishkia hasn't come yet, because he's waiting for perfection on my part.
no. So,
Being on,
Sandy, you're asking several questions. So,
yes, I know.
in short, the first of all, I didn't say angels. I said good. I said good people. Good people, especially in Tanya definition, does not mean it's tzaddik. It means people who have done more good than bad in their lives. And Sandy, you qualify beyond that. All right. And then, but in terms of what we put in how we bury people, there's two things. Number one, the reason why we bury every part, and if there's a terrorist attack, God forbid, we try to collect all the pieces, because the soul is in the blood, as it says in the Torah. The soul resides in the blood, and our job is to, when a person passes away, to bury every part. From earth you came, from earth you shall return, and not allow something linger outside of its burial as part of the resting place for that body and soul. So it's not directly connected to resurrection, more for what just happened now, because we have out of respect and dignity of the person, we got to bring the person to rest completely as much as we have the ability to do so. In terms of resurrection, the people, one of the reasons we don't cremate is because cremation is an expression that I don't believe in the resurrection, because the resurrection will happen from the remaining DNA of the person where they are buried. What happened to all the people that were cremated in the Holocaust? We are talking about a concept that is run by Hashem's program, not by a human program. Hashem has the ability to resurrect anybody from anywhere, from any standard, from any situation. So there's no question in my mind that our 6 million holy Jews who were cremated are going to be not just cremated, resurrected, but they're going to be in the front lines of the holies of holies who died al Kiddush Hashem. But to actively go and to cremate is an expression that I reject. And the Talmud says a person who cremates will not have a share in the coming of the resurrection. That's another topic. A lot of people that cremate today just don't do it out of ignorance, because they don't understand. They don't understand what it's all about. That's why I gave a whole class on that in March. But once I go, we got to understand what it's about, why, and then we have a much deeper appreciation, not only what will happen then, but what my action today actually affects to get us to such a special timing. There's a lot of questions, and overpopulation. Okay, well, we'll discuss that. How I'm going to ask you a tougher question, Sandy. You like questions? What happens if a person married to two people? Right? Mm-hmm. They come back alive. Who do they go to?
A third.
Huh? The
third.
Okay.
Third.
All right. Oh, if you have another question, we're supposed to read a bit inside. Yes. It's just an introduction to this. Go ahead, Ulf.
Yes, sorry. I have that question about the cremation.
Yeah.
So where does it kind of say that the people who are cremated? I'm just thinking, for example, about Mahatma Gandhi, who I'm thinking of as a very special person. And I really would like to see him in the future world to come.
Meditate.
but we know he's being cremated. So, and his ashes are in the seas. So where does it kind of read that?
So, let me tell you something.
Where does it say that in the Torah or in the teachings?
In the about cremation, it says in the Talmud. I can show you the source, but the idea is when it comes to resurrection, there is no, as I said, just said earlier, there is no playbook. There's no like rules in terms of who's coming back, who's not coming back. We really don't know. A lot of those things that will happen in the future, we don't have clarity other than what is mentioned in the prophets, in the Talmud. So we got to do our best in our own life, to do our utmost best to do what Hashem wants us to do, and then the rest I'll leave it up to Hashem. So when Mashiach comes, Ulf, you can put a request.
Okay, I'll do.
Okay, let's go. Let's read a bit inside. We're on page 408. Wait. So, on the bottom, chapter 37. Your struggle is worth it. Part 3. Section 1, a mitzvah and its reward. Throughout chapter 35 and 36, the Tanya has attempted to offer us some comfort over our spiritual predicament. While we may not be able to worship God with the emotional intensity and consistency of the tzaddik, we can achieve external mastery over our actions. And that, the Tanya has argued, is actually more important in the scheme of things. It is a sacred action in the form of mitzvah observance, which fulfills God's purpose in creation, making a home for God in the lowest realms. In this chapter, the Tanya continues to explore this theme in further depth. So now, the fullest expression of this reality of a home for God in the lowest realm, what we call in Hebrew dira betachtonim, is, as we have learned in chapter 36, in the time of the Messianic era and the revival of the dead, since at that time there will be a disclosure of the blessed infinite light within this physical world. In chapter 36, we learn that God's purpose in creating the world will only be completely fulfilled in the future during the Messianic era. Yet we also learned that the future home for God in the lowest realms is not a phenomenon disconnected with our activity in the current era, not something once will happen. Rather, at all this, in Hebrew it's very powerful, toloi b'maseinu v'avodaseinu. All this is dependent on our mitzvah actions and our worship and prayer throughout the whole period of exile, which gradually and cumulatively neutralizes the forces of Klippa. Of course, all this mitzvot performed since Sinai, 14th century BCE, contribute to this effect, but the Tanya points specifically to the worship of the whole period of the exile, beginning 1st century CE, where it's during this last exile, basically since the destruction of Second Temple period, that Klippa forces are at their strongest, and as a result, the neutralizing power of each mitzvah is also at its strongest. As we noted in the previous chapter, the Messianic era is classically perceived as a time of rewards, a period of human benefit rather than divine satisfaction. Yet here, the Messianic era is framed as a time when God's desire for creation are finally fulfilled, when he finally enters his home. To help reconcile these two approaches, which two approaches? The human benefit, number one, and divine satisfaction to have finally his home. The Tanya now offers a novel insight into the sage's teaching. The reward for a mitzvah is a mitzvah. Mishnah Avos 4:2 in Ethics of our Fathers. Because that which causes the reward for a mitzvah is that same mitzvah itself. The plain meaning of the word for mitzvah as a mitzvah is a person that has done one mitzvah is orchestrated and assisted by heaven to do another one in order that he should be rewarded for both. However, the Tanya offers here a deeper explanation. And we are not speaking of one mitzvah leading to another, but one single mitzvah. The reward for a mitzvah is nothing other than the spiritual result of performing it. Because through performing the mitzvah, this single mitzvah, you pull down a disclosure of the blessed infinite light from above to below, so that the blessed infinite light becomes enmeshed in the physical fabric of this world. This reward is not something else given in exchange for performing the mitzvah, like being paid money for doing a job. Rather, the reward is you fulfilled the purpose of creation by causing the blessed infinite light to be disclosed in the physical world through your mitzvah. So it's like a cause and effect, not a reward, but cause and effect. I do a mitzvah. What is my reward? That my mitzvah has actually caused the infinite light to be disclosed in this physical world. So now we turn to the precise spiritual dynamics of the mitzvah. As we learned previously, a mitzvah brings about a home for God below, because it causes God's light to be disclosed in a physical object. And in doing so, the mitzvah elevates the forces of Klippas Noga, which has previously ruled that object, bringing pleasure to God on high. And that disclosure of the blessed infinite light comes into an object which had initially been under the control of Klippas Noga, which is the evil inclinations, though, that covers it up. And the object had been receiving its energy from Klippas Noga, as we learned in chapter 3. And mitzvah may only be performed with an object which receives its energy from Klippas Noga, the least potent form of Klippa, which is capable of acting as a medium for God's presence to be disclosed. Versus which one? Which is the bad Klippa. There's two types of Klippa. Klippas Noga is the one that you're allowed to engage, the neutral type of physical object, and then there's the forbidden Klippa. So a mitzvah, you can only make a mitzvah on something that is kosher. I can only make mitzvah, I can only give charity with money I earned in a kosher way. The money that exists is through Klippas Noga. But if I make a mitzvah, if I give charity with stolen money, then that money is from the unholy Klippa, from the unkosher Klippa. When I do mitzvah, when I give tzedakah, the money, Klippa that's in the money disappears, so to speak, and Hashem's presence gets enmeshed in the money itself. So I have transformed the physical object into a godly home for Hashem. And so on with all the other mitzvahs. The Tanya now briefly reviews some examples of suitable Klippas Noga objects from the animal and plant kingdom, as well as from the non-living matter. On bottom 410. Klippa Noga controls all ritually pure and kosher items which are practical mitzvahs may be observed, such as in the animal kingdom, the parchment on which to fill in a mezuzah, Torah scroll may be written. As the sages of blessed memory taught, only ritually pure species are fit for the work of heaven, and that which is permissible for your mouth. The same is meaning that I can only use parchment from a kosher animal that I'm allowed to technically consume to write a Torah and to write a mezuzah on it. Same is true in the plant kingdom. For example, you may use an etrog for a mitzvah, provided it's not prohibited by biblical injunction against orla. Orla is which prohibits the first 3 years of fruits from a tree, in which case it will come from a completely impure klippas. There are agricultural laws in Torah for a new tree, for example. The first 3 years of the tree are not allowed to have any benefit from the fruits, only in the 4th year. So if I make a blessing on an etrog, which is we do on Sukkot, on an etrog that is from the first 3 years, then the first 3 years the etrog still has energy from klippa, impure klippas, and I don't have the ability to transform it for home for Hashem. I did not accomplish anything by making the blessing on such an etrog. Only a kosher etrog. And if I write a Torah scroll on a parchment made out of pigskin, then I also did not accomplish anything, because pigskin is klippa tmeah. And same thing idea with money, continue here 411. For example, from non-living matter will be money to be given to charity that was not stolen, because if it was stolen, it would come from the completely impure klippas and be unfit for use of a mitzvah. The Tanya now describes what happens spiritually when a mitzvah is performed with a klippa noga object. So again, we have two types of klippa. The kosher klippa is called klippas noga. The unkosher is called the klippas tmeot. So now, when you take one of these klippas noga objects and use them to carry out God's mitzvah, which is His will, what happens is the object's energy is elevated, its sense of separateness is voided, and it's absorbed into the blessed infinite light. And the disclosure of the blessed infinite light here is nothing other than God's will, as is expressed in the mitzvah. Since, as we have learned, in the divine will expressed within the mitzvah, there is no hiding of God's face at all that would conceal His light. That is in terms of mitzvahs. So we did this in chapter 35, that the will of Hashem that exists in every mitzvah is what kind of transform the physical object into a godly object. How is it that I take a piece of parchment and write the Shema on it, and now it becomes holy? I kiss it, it's holy. What made it holy? Because a person wrote something on it, it becomes holy? What happens if I take a piece of parchment and I write on it, long live Jerusalem, right? I write Am Yisrael Chai on a piece of parchment. Is that a mezuzah? Is that a holy object? No. Why not? Everybody loves Am Yisrael Chai. Because Am Yisrael Chai is not that word is not a mitzvah, it's not a will. Hashem never wrote anywhere you should write on a piece of parchment Am Yisrael Chai. Only when I do something that is the will of Hashem, when I write the Shema prayer, which Hashem asked me, write this on your doorpost, then I have engaged or infused, embedded the will of Hashem in this physical object. The physical object, which is klippas noga, becomes now a holy object. And similar also is not only with the mitzvah, but also with Torah study. Now think about yourself. You as a human being. Are you klippas noga or are you klippa tmeya? Which one are you? So we are klippa because our bodies is klippa. Klippa means it's not 100% godly. But are we? You're not allowed to eat humans, right? But a human body is klippa noga. It's not klippa tmeya. So think about yourself as being a klippa noga, and you have the neshama inside of you. What is the process of your transformation, of your embedment of Hashem inside of you? Just because the soul is inside doesn't mean the soul has penetrated or kind of like the word embedded your klippa yet. What do you have to do? So you can do a mitzvah, but most mitzvahs is not with your body. It doesn't really stick to your body. It's an external action of giving money, lighting candles. What is the most powerful mitzvah that is inside of your being? That is Torah study. Torah study uses your brain, uses your intellect. Let's go and say over here, section 2. So far, we have been discussing practical mitzvahs that involve the use of a physical object, but do mitzvahs that are performed verbally, such as prayer and Torah study, come under the umbrella of practical mitzvahs? Do they also make a home for God below, even though they don't directly involve a physical object? The Tanya will now argue that even prayer and Torah study do cause the blessed infinite light to be disclosed in physical matter, and even the mitzvahs of reading the Shema, Torah study, and prayer, while they do not involve a substantive physical action with an object which was previously under control of klippas noga, nevertheless, there is at least some minimal level of physical activity in the moving of the lips as you recite the words. The Tanya now proves the significance of moving the lips from the point of view of Jewish law. It's interesting, in Jewish law, you have to use the lips to pray. You can't just pray from the heart only. You actually have to utter the words. Why is that so important? Let's see. For we maintain that with mitzvot performed verbally, Meditation does not count as recitation, Talmud brachos, and you do not fulfill your obligation with these mitzvahs until you make the words come out of your mouth. And we maintain that moving the lips constitutes a concrete action. While Torah and prayer may not involve any substantive action, the halachic requirement to verbally articulate the words does constitute a type of action which engages the animal soul, so they are at some level practical mitzvahs. What's impossible for the divine soul to express itself through verbal articulation via the physical lips, mouth, tongue, and teeth, unless the divine soul acts through the medium of the energizing animal soul, because unlike the divine soul, which cannot interact directly with the body, the animal soul interacts with the body, limbs tangibly. The idea is not purely theoretical, it also has a found practical ramification. And the louder you speak, the more you enter and immerse your energizing animal soul into these words. Practice speaking when you study Torah and pray more energetically, saying the words with more gusto. Your animal soul absorbs the blessing from light to a great extent because it's more involved in the mitzvah. The Tanya now cites scriptural and Talmudic support for the idea of energetic involvement of the body in prayer and study. And the need to involve the body in prayer is implied by the verse, all my bones will exclaim, who is like you, God? Psalm 35:10. In Jewish legal text, this verse is cited as a source for involving the body in swaying movements during prayer. Why do we move in prayer? Why? Psalm 35, my whole body, all my limbs proclaim, who is like you, Hashem. Which refers to the importance of study Torah aloud. And this is also stressed by the teaching of our sages of blessed memory, which refers to the importance of studying Torah aloud. Beruya came across a disciple. Who was Beruya, by the way? A woman. She was the woman. She was the wife of Rebbe Meir. One of the greatest scholars of all of Talmud is a lady by the name of Beruya. Rebbe Meir tells about his wife. Unbelievable things. So Beruya came across a disciple who was learning his tradition in a whisper. She rebuked him, saying to him, isn't written, ordered in all things and retained? If it's ordered in those 248 limbs of yours, it will be retained. And if not, it won't be retained. If you're not uttering, if you're not body, all your limbs and organs are moving while you're learning, while you're doing the mitzvah, it's not going to be retained. So the message here is that your Torah will be retained and remembered if your body is engaged when studying it. But a tendency of forgetfulness is rooted in the klippa of the body and energizing animal soul. If the cause of forgetfulness, klippa, can be eliminated, how? Through energetic involvement, Torah is more likely to be retained and remembered. And since the body and animal soul are from klippas noga, which are capable of being elevated and absorbed into holiness, the tendency to forgetfulness can be averted. And that is when the powers are withdrawn from non-sacred pursuits and fully immersed into the sacred practice of Torah study of prayer, i.e. through involving the body and animal soul as much as possible for verbalization and bodily involvement. We run a little bit of a side idea, which is a powerful idea, that we want to engage our bodies in our mitzvahs and Torah study in the most active way. And that's been really a very strong Jewish idea. Prayer has to be loud. Study. Keep your entire body engaged by shaking, by dancing, by celebrating. And that's why when you walk into a yeshiva, for example, you will see an interesting phenomenon. If you walk into a university, walk into the library of a university, it's extremely quiet, right? Everyone's quietly studying. Walk into yeshiva hall, it's extremely noisy. I'm going to do this. I'm going to actually Google quick a yeshiva today. I'll see if I can pull up one of my yeshivas I studied, and you can see it for yourself. Okay, I just found a very short clip of this, but I'll show it to you quick here. Can you see the screen?
Yes.
Okay, so you see this is a study hall in Yeshiva in New York where I studied, and they study in pairs the Talmud, and he's just giving a little walkthrough here. But the Zohar is very incredibly. It's time to broaden the Zohar too. You see how noisy it is? I know it's very short. Everyone's debating. Everyone's talking to each other, and it's one big noisy. It's a very noisy room because everyone's debating and talking and discussing the Talmud. Just an example. Also in prayer. One of the things that people come sometimes, especially when it comes to Chabad, is they're a little bit lost in the prayers, right? Lost. They're more used that there's a nice cantor who does all the beautiful singing, and everybody's taking a seat and kind of watching the opera. I think in other circles and other religion, that's perhaps the custom. And in traditional Judaism, everybody gets to daven together, and it's noisy, or it's a little bit sometimes the guy's shaking and the guy's talking and the guy's louder, guy's quieter, and he's Sephardi and Ashkenazi. Think about the davening is the friction of the neshama and the body. It's that friction. And if you are the neshama and you want to daven, you got to bring the body along with it, right? And it's back and forth. It's not just having some type of spiritual experience where the neshama, where the only focus is, let me just zero in on my soul. My body, I don't want to deal with it. I don't want to talk about it. In davening, prayer, part of prayer is actually to bring your body with you. Bring your animal soul with you. Just like on Shabbos we eat. We have a nice kiddush. Why do we have a nice kiddush on Shabbos? Why it's a mitzvah to eat on Shabbos, delicious food, because you got to bring your body with it. Shabbos, the body also has to celebrate Shabbos. So this is kind of the engagement of every mitzvah, is to bring Hashem's light in the klippah, that the parchment, the money, whatever I'm dealing with, and then also in my own body. When I do a mitzvah, when I study Torah, I have to utter the words. When I utter the words, the more gusto I give, the more my body is engaged. I'm utilizing the klippah to not to be the klippah, but really to be what the purpose is, to be transparent in Hashem's light. All right, go yell and daven loud with a lot of gusto. Any questions before we write up here? We're going to continue next week. We're in section 3. Any questions?
Just a short, notice. I came to Chabad from a Reform synagogue. We all pray there loud, but in English, because we don't know Hebrew, unfortunately. That's why we sit quietly in Chabad to listen to you. Not because we don't want to, because we don't know how.
And well,
yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
There's to me another side of this is be still and know that I am God. It is actually only in quiet that I can hear what God is trying to speak to my heart. The more I talk, I feel like I understand what the logic is with this, but the more I talk, it's about me. And I can't receive until I stop.
Leona, you're correct, and that's why there is no one fit for all, especially when it comes to prayer. And now you understand why there are so many synagogues in Jewish world. I'm talking about within the Orthodox world. You can go to Brooklyn. On every block, you have 6 synagogues. Did you know that? On every block, this type of synagogue and that type of synagogue. This synagogue, people pray more quietly. This synagogue, they're a little more exciting. This synagogue is more for the learned. Not in a bad way because of separation of this. Everybody comes together for the celebrations and that, because everyone has to tailor how is their friction with their animal soul working best in their service Hashem.
And I'm talking about at home. So not being in a place, I mean, it's hard to have it perfectly quiet, but it's only in those private, small places where you can really be alone with God. I think that's my experience.
And that's why for a person like yourself, praying should be done more at home than in the synagogues, perhaps. Tell you something, the Rebbe did not daven in the synagogue in the first years, only on Shabbos. During the week, he davened himself in his office, in his room. He did not come out for the prayers. And the Rebbe prayed for many hours himself. Now, just to give you context, if you look in the Hasidic sects, it's interesting. They are very into davening very loud. The Rebbe, when you look at how the Rebbe davens, Rebbe's davened almost didn't shake. I can show you videos. You can see on the videos how the Rebbe davened. And versus most other Hasidic sects, they are very into talking about gusto. You will be surprised how they daven. Like really yelling, like they have a whole. Chabad is more mind over just screaming and yelling and davening, and that's their way of serving. That's beautiful as well, and that's why some people they are more drawn to Bresler, for example, different groups. We all daven the same thing, but it got to fit kind of to your personality.
The heart. It's
This is good.
It all and it has to come from the heart. It just can't be
Absolutely.
and
Yeah.
going through the motion without the heart.
Right. Yes.
Can I ask a quick question?
Yes.
I don't expect a full answer. It's not for this class. When we always say that the dwelling place for God was in a holy temple. It's not here today. And when we talk about resurrection, we're talking coming of Messiah. We talk about third temple being miraculously appear one day. It's hard for our brain to imagine that it just appears. Where and how?
You talking about the temple?
Yeah.
So there's two prophecies. One says that we are going to build the third temple. The other prophecy says the temple is going to appear from heaven. Which is basically the difference if Mashiach is going to come. It says one place Mashiach is going to arrive on a donkey. Another place says Mashiach will arrive on a cloud. So there's two parallels in the prophets, giving us two different scenarios. And to resolve those two parallels, it really depends, according to my mind, is if the Jewish, according to the Talmud, if the people were deserving of the coming of Mashiach, or time expired, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
If we initiated and ushered in the era of Mashiach, things will be a much more of a miraculous way, because it will come kind of from above. Or there can be a combination. We're going to build, and when we say that the building is going to come from heaven, it could be like in the temple times where the fire came from heaven. So these are good questions. We gotta dig into, the JLI actually just came out with a course about Mashiach, and I'm looking into it to maybe offer it a 6-week course in depth about Mashiach. We should do that.
Yeah, we should.
Thank you, Rita. But Rita, only on camera or in person?
Why can't
No,
we-
in person. In person.
Yeah, but why
Definitely
can't
in person.
people build the third temple? Why it has to come from Mashiach?
Say again?
Why people cannot build the temple?
When you build a temple, you can build a structure on the Temple Mount. It doesn't mean that Hashem wants to reside in it or is ready to reside in it. They tried that in the Second Temple period, and it took them a long time. And actually, it never really fully manifests itself. So there has to be, a temple is not just a structure, it has to be with the directive of Hashem. So, you know, when people say, let's just go onto Temple Mount today and build this temple, it's a cute idea, but it's not really what we are called for. Yes.
Actually, I think the third temple is all of our bodies where God's going to appear.
Not really.
That's beautiful. Well, oh, that's correct. It's also correct. But one more point, and I mentioned that many times. The Medrash says that every mitzvah we do is we are creating a brick. The expression is we're creating a brick to the temple. That means the temple is already being built throughout the exile that we're in. And so it's not like some new structure is going to appear. Just imagine every mitzvah is a brick, and we have been building this structure for 3,000 years or 2,000 years, and it is just now that we have to finish the last touches, and that's when Mashiach will come. Like we said, the veil will open up and it will appear, and it's the question is, how is it that the great Rabbi Akiva couldn't bring Mashiach? We're going to bring Mashiach. Look at the world state today. We are on a much lower spiritual level than any time in history, in a sense. But we are at the footsteps. We are at the last. We just have to put the Rebbe would say we have to polish the buttons. If we could polish our buttons, that's where it's all there already. We just have to polish them and just do another mitzvah, and that can trigger it all. It's great seeing everybody. Have a fantastic week.
Thank you, Rabbi. Thank
All
you.
the best.
Thank you so much.